some technical issues, figure out what's been going on. And it's a problem because we need to just hit stream the moment we all get in the room, so all of these conversations can just stream live. I think it would make for some good entertainment.
I think we'd be off the air in a day.
Yeah, we may be disliked, but whatever. It's good stuff. Anyway, welcome to the Deeper Dive presented by Yahoo.com, proud sponsor of this 5 p.m. to 6 p.m. broadcast with myself, Dave Loughran, and Adam Scher. How we doing today, fella?
Doing good. How about you?
Oh, not bad. Not bad. Phillies almost blew another one, but
yeah, I was for that.
Managed to get out of it. Sonny Gray appears to have developed back into a semi-decent pitcher again. I wonder, though.
Excellent pitcher is what you meant.
Okay, ease up, fella. I wonder, though. Remember how bad he was at Yankee Stadium?
Yeah.
I wonder if we're going to see. What's that? Yeah, remember, I wonder if we're going to see some of that at Great American, though.
I don't. For me, and obviously I have no idea. I never talked to the guy, but to me, I attribute it more to just
the
pitching
pressure
in New York than the actual ballpark.
The pressure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe you're right. We'll find out. Anyway, let's jump into it. We've got FanDuel's doing it again. We'll just cover these first, Adam. We have 7 games on the main slate for normal sites and then 10 for FanDuel. So let's just hop into it. We'll cover these 3 early games, 6:35, 6:40, and another 6:40. Boston, New York, Pittsburgh, Detroit, Cleveland, Seattle. We'll go one by one here. We'll make it quick, and then we'll spend most of the time on the 7 gamers. But I don't want to just completely dismiss this because it is on the main slate for FanDuel. First, you have J.A. Happ and Nathan Eovaldi. J.A. Happ at home going up against the powerful righties. And Eovaldi, who, look, he made some adjustments last year. We talked about it. The plane that he was throwing his 2 fastballs on was making it harder for batters to see what was coming out of his hand, and he looked better. But he appears to have come back to the Nathan Eovaldi that we all know and love. But anyway, this game taking place at Yankee Stadium. Any interest in pitching here? If not, we'll talk hitting.
I have a little bit in Eovaldi. Obviously not as appealing because we're talking FanDuel where you only have to roster the one pitcher, but he is 6,300 and the Yankees are kind of a shell of what they normally are now. There's not a lot of good pitching on this slate, even when you include, these extra 3 games. So I don't mind getting to some Eovaldi. I don't really have interest in J.A. Happ. Obviously just a really dangerous Boston lineup, not a lot of strikeouts, tons of power. So I could see just, using the savings on Eovaldi in some lineups.
Okay. Boston hitters, you have any interest here? We're looking at a Betts, Bogarts, Martinez, Pierce, top 4. That's a tough 1, 2, 3, 4 to get through if you're any left-hander, good or not.
Yeah, no question. And one thing I had mentioned on the show with Josh this morning was that Steve Pierce had some pinch hit risk, but I think that's mitigated by the fact that Mitch Moreland is in the lineup as well. So a little bit less scary for Pierce since Moreland's already in there. Makes me like him a bit more, especially at 2,400 on FanDuel. JD, obviously one of the best hitters in baseball, as is Mookie Betts. Xander Bogaerts' power has come around since he came back from his wrist injury a couple years ago. Just all kinds of power here. Obviously the priorities for me would be Pierce at 2,400 and then, JD and Mookie.
Yeah, Pierce there's tough to overlook, and the guy hits lefties well, so I have no issues with Pierce whatsoever. Anything on the Yankees side? You mentioned it is basically a skeleton crew Yankees lineup, right? A bunch of guys that should be in the lineup are injured, but you still have some powerful bats, some talented guys here. Also a decent amount of strikeouts, but I just don't know if Nathan Eovaldi has enough to get it done. What's your take here on these Yankees bats at home?
4,400 for Judge, I think, is okay. I mean, on one hand, he's more expensive than JD, he's more expensive than Mookie, and I would put him behind both of those guys. But he does still have upside against Eovaldi. So Judge would be my favorite guy here, but in general, I just prefer the Red Sox side of this.
Got some wicked allergies today, man. Everyone's cutting their lawns, and I just walked the dog, and I feel, that feeling. I know you get it as well. Just brutal, man. Got to move somewhere where this isn't a concern. Pittsburgh and Detroit, Trevor Williams, Spencer Turnbull. I do think, while neither pitcher is terrible, I do think on FanDuel you have some decent pricing on some of these Pittsburgh bats. But I guess we can start first with the matchup between Williams and Turnbull. Any interest here?
Not a ton. Detroit's really bad. Williams isn't bad as a pitcher, but he's not great as a DFS guy. Him to get lit up or anything, so I guess he's viable. But I think in tournaments, unless I'm not sacrificing anything in the way of bats, I'd rather save $1,600 and take my chances on Eovaldi and just get completely out of that mid range. Turnbull, I think, pretty decent, but not a ton of strikeouts in the Pittsburgh lineup. I think he's like a comparable play to Eovaldi just because of the price.
Okay. Like I said, I don't have an issue with some of the cheaper bats. I don't think any of them need to be priorities here, but guys like Frazier and Marte is also pretty cheap. These guys are in decent spots, and while it's not a great park, it's still an upgrade from PNC. Any issues or anything you like here for the Pirates bats or Detroit bats?
I mean, I agree with you. 2,200 for Jung Ho Gung. I thought he'd be hitting higher in the order. Hitting seventh, I don't like it as much, but still a cheap price tag. The problem is, like, while you have, Colin Moran at 2,800, you have Nick Castellanos at 2,800, and those are both, pretty inexpensive price tags. Once we start getting into some of these other games, you're going to see that on FanDuel, there's other really, really cheap guys. We already mentioned Pierce, but you have, other guys like Brandon Belt, for example, at 2,700. So I still don't think you need to be prioritizing hitters against Turnbull or Williams.
Somebody that you liked quite a bit last year, I just want to throw it out there. He's batting fifth today with the platoon advantage. Thoughts on Kristen Stewart?
It's just I don't like picking on Trevor Williams that much, and compared to some other guys, he's more expensive.
Yeah, he
So
is.
it's just tough for me to get there.
I agree. Not a bad player though. I'm assuming that eventually he'll end up, having a legitimate, I guess I don't know. I guess he is in the lineup every day. It just you don't hear much from him. He's been decent though. He's got 9 extra base hits already this season, 13 RBIs. Kristen Stewart's actually been pretty good.
Yeah, I
But
mean, he's
yeah,
got power.
what?
He has power
Oh
too.
yeah. But like you said, he's not that cheap. There are some cheap guys, and we'll get to them. The last one on the FanDuel slate, well, the 6 p.m. start, Cleveland and Seattle. I did the early bird with EMAC, and he was I guess he was looking to torture me, and we had to talk about the why do you laugh? We had to talk about the 6 p.m. only slate, right? So like the 3-game turbo slate. Thanks, EMAC.
Sure, yeah.
What?
Welcome to my Saturday.
Yeah, mileage may vary. And yeah, he knows he overuses that like a motherfucker. Anyway, you have Carlos Carrasco and Eric Swanson. Swanson, Zips has him projected like just under a strikeout per inning. And you look at his AA and AAA numbers, the guy got a good amount of strikeouts facing a bad Cleveland team. If you're playing the turbo slate on DraftKings, where you have to play 2 pitchers, or you're just looking to go completely off the reservation with a dirt cheap pitcher, the Indians lineup just isn't that good. The only thing is they don't have that many strikeouts, at least not at the top. But Eric Swanson profiles to actually be a decent guy from a strikeout standpoint. He's at a good park tonight. So I'm just throwing that out there, Adam. He's not, and he's like the 12th prospect in their system, top 12, which doesn't say much, but him and Carrasco here in Seattle.
I agree with you on Swanson. Probably unnecessary on FanDuel, but if you are playing that turbo slate, he's fine.
Yeah.
26% strikeout percentage and 72 innings at AAA last year in the Yankees system. Now he's with Seattle. He seems like he's completely fine, and the Indians aren't very good. The really interesting spot here is Carrasco, though, because pitching's so thin on this slate that he should be the highest owned pitcher by probably a relatively wide margin. I'm a little concerned about him after his last start against Kansas City, where he didn't get out of the first inning. His velocity on all of his pitches was down, depending on what site you look at, 1.5 to 2.5 miles per hour. He hasn't gotten swings and misses. That start only he lasted 2 outs, but the game before that against Toronto, he had a sub 10% swinging strike percentage as well. I'm a little concerned about him, but there's just not enough pitching to really turn to on this slate. You also have a Mariners lineup that's pretty watered down. Missing Mitch Haniger makes a pretty big difference here when you look at the lineup. The bottom, offers you some strikeouts. Like Healy has power, but he strikes out. Dylan Moore is nothing. Omar Narvaez isn't any good. Tim Beckham strikes out. Vogelbach will strike out. Like, I think it's a good enough spot and a bad enough pitching slate where I'll just suck it up, and I would suck it up and go to Carrasco. But maybe, if you are playing 150 lineups, have a little bit more Seattle exposure than you otherwise would, because I think there's a non-zero chance that Carrasco, that's something
You could be right, man. Absolutely. Now, his home road splits are pretty dramatic over his career, or especially over the last few years. Uh, Pointing that out, it's not crucial, but it makes sense to at least mention it. And he has been, better against righties. He's got 6 righties, and all of the Mariners' best hitters are righties, or at least, most of them. Like you said, Narvaez doesn't concern you whatsoever. Vogelbach's got some power, but not a massive concern. And then Jay Bruce, look, Jay Bruce is having a strong season, but you can get him to swing over some pitches as well. But I do totally agree with you that it's not, the way I see it is, it's not the greatest spot for Carrasco either. And there are some concerns. But going back to the first thing you said, it's not like pitching is all that deep today either.
Right, and that's where that's what it comes down to for me. If we had a lot of other options that I felt good about, I would probably, just go to those guys. But I know that I'm not accurate enough at guessing when a guy is about to go on the disabled list that I should be changing my projection on Carrasco that much. And then when you factor in that I'd have to, drop it pretty considerably, and then probably like raise some other guys who are just as risky, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense.
Any bats from this game you have interest in? Bless you.
Thanks. Jay Bruce is priced nicely at 3K. On the other side, Jose Ramirez at 3,600 is still just too cheap for his track record. I know he's not hit right now, but we've seen what the guy can do at the plate for years now. So I think he's a little cheap. You do get pretty nice price tags on the Indians with Cargo at 2,700, Tyler Naquin at 24, but Ramirez is the one that really stands out.
All right. Carrasco allowed 15 stolen bases last year, right in the middle of the league in that respect. So nothing huge there. And, when you're looking at this Seattle lineup, I still believe that he's a very good pitcher. There might be some concerns, but outside of that, not a ton of speed here in good position that I'm looking to target either. All right, Adam. Anything else on these 3 games, or do you want to shoot into this main slate?
Nope, good to keep going.
All right, let's do it. So we've got 7 games here, and some lousy pitching in a lot of spots. Earlier today, Jake Odorizzi on DraftKings had a projected ownership of 50%. 50%, which is just downright wild. I mean, if Odorizzi is going to be 50%, I don't care if it's a 2-pitcher site or not. To me, I'm going to find ways to go against that. And then on Yahoo, sponsor of the Deeper Dive, you're getting a guy like Odorizzi who is $32 compared to the most expensive pitcher on the slate, 47, Cole Hamels. They're only running the 7 p.m. games as well. It's just, it's important to point out ownership here, Adam. Like right now, we still have, it was updated 4 hours ago. On DraftKings, Hamels is projected at 51% ownership, Odorizzi at 50%. And on Yahoo, only talking 2-pitcher sites here and slates where we don't have the Carrasco spot. Hamels at 54 and Odorizzi at 53. And that is a lot of ownership on a guy like Jake Odorizzi.
Yeah, and there's also significant weather concerns in the Odorizzi game, so that could throw a wrench into things.
All right, well, let's jump into it. I did want to point it out because it's amazing, and it just goes to show you that pitching is not super deep here. There may be some guys that we can look at that are less popular, but your chalk, Washington, San Francisco, Samardzija, and Hellickson. I mean, even Hellickson was garnering some ownership. Last I saw, he was around like 12 or 15%, Adam. I mean, there's Jeremy Hellickson, a guy that rarely misses bats, right now at 12% on DraftKings. I just, again, it goes to show you what type or what we're looking at here from a depth perspective at the pitcher position. Right now, the Washington Nationals have a 4.6 implied total against Jeff Samardzija, and the San Francisco Giants at 4 even against Hellickson at Nationals Park. What are you doing with pitching here?
Give me all the bats in this game. I don't feel the need to get the Hellickson here. I don't think he's a particularly good pitcher. Like, I don't think he's terrible, but I don't think the Giants are good, but they're also not as much of a cakewalk outside of San Francisco. It is a pretty big park upgrade for them. You have a guy in Hellickson who doesn't miss bats, and I really like the prices on these Giants. So I'd rather get to them. Like I like stacking both sides of this game. Brandon Belt's one of my favorite plays on the entire slate at 2,700 on
Yeah.
FanDuel,
Even
3,900.
39 on DraftKings too.
Yeah, yeah, 39 on DraftKings. I think he's like 14 on FanDuel or something.
14 on Yahoo. Yeah.
Yeah, I meant Yahoo.
I know
Yeah.
what you meant. Which is the same price as like Martin Prado and CJ Cron.
Right. Brandon Belt goes like incredibly overlooked because of playing his entire career in San Francisco, but the guy is a good hitter. And if you look at the stuff that Hellickson does throw, like the off-speed junk that he throws to lefties, Belt, even though he plays half of his games in San Francisco, like his expected WOBA is over 400, but his actual ISO, not his expected, his actual is well over 200 against basically everything Hellickson is going to throw him, and it's a ballpark boost for him. So I love Brandon, but then looking at catcher, you get the Buster Posey, who hit for 0 power last year, but he was playing his hip. You probably see at least some more power out of him this year. He's really cheap. Brandon Crawford's really cheap. Duggar's really cheap. Not that he's a good hitter, but it's just a guy that lets you get in high upside bats elsewhere. Even Evan Longoria last above average hitter outside of San Francisco, and then he was like 40% below league average when he was at home. So it's just a huge park shift for them. And Hellickson's not the type of pitcher that I expect them to necessarily struggle with.
Yeah. Just, adding on to that, you look at Hellickson, he's had 2 appearances this year, one of them a start, one of them out of the bullpen. And you say, oh, that one against Philly was really nice, right? 6 strikeouts, 6 scoreless innings. But Adam, he also had a 5% swinging strike rate in that game. I mean, it was still bad. It was just the fact that the Phillies swung at 40% of his pitches in the zone. Think about that.
Right.
They start, 46% zone swing rate. He got a lot of looking strikes, and there's nothing about him in that game or anything that suggests that he's going to start getting more strikeouts. I have no faith in his ability to do so. I'm with you. And Brandon Belt, you mentioned this a lot, and I think it's as valid as ever today. National Park may not be Citizens Bank Park. It may not be Coors. It may not be Globe Life, but it is still significantly more friendly for hitters than what is it now? Oracle Park. I mean, it's not even close. And you look at him home and on the road, right? On the road for his career, I'll do it this way. At home for his career, Belt has a 184 ISO, 198 ISO on the road. But then you look at him on the road against righties, 207 career ISO, 354 WOA, 122 WRC plus. I mean, and those were some early seasons where he wasn't great mixed in there. He is very good, and he is very cheap. So I'm with you there. But I want to ask you about, before we move on, Buster Posey. He just seems there's nothing left. And listen, I get catcher's awful today, like worse than normal. But Posey's probably going to be pretty popular. I'm still not that excited about it. There are 2 other guys that I like more, but what are your thoughts on Posey at a bad position?
So, I mean, I agree with you. Like from an upside standpoint, I prefer Mike Zunino at the same price.
He was one of the ones I'm mentioning. Yeah.
Yeah. But the thing with Posey is, like, I don't expect him to go back to hitting for the power he did earlier in his career, but I think he's better than last season because he was playing through a pretty significant injury for most of that year. And the thing is, like, even last year where he had no power, he was still above average in terms of production, which doesn't necessarily translate to, DFS success. But when you compare it to other catchers and what they do at the plate, and you factor in the really inexpensive price tag and the positive park shift, I am still interested in, $3,300 Posey. If he was 4K, I wouldn't want him because he's most likely just, singling, maybe doubling, and, hopefully scoring a couple of runs. But at 3,300, hitting in the middle of this order in a positive park shift and in a, season where I think he at least rebounds somewhat from a power standpoint, I'm fine with it.
What about these national bats? You got any interest in, the likes of Juan Soto, Adam Eaton, Matt Adams batting cleanup here? A bunch of power lefties at the top, excluding Adam Eaton, a good third baseman, of course, and Rendon. And then the bottom of the lineup gets kind of ugly of Kendrick, Suzuki, Defoe, Hellickson, Victor Robles, who I obviously like, but he's batting 9th. If anything, it would be the top of the order for me. What about you?
That's where I'm at too. The lineup's just kind of ugly. Not that Dozier is great, but him I think kind of stands out.
Still
Um,
looks worse like this. Yeah, I agree.
yeah, and so I don't know. Like part of me is almost just like interested in getting a little bit of Samardzija because SP2 is so ugly. But I do at least really like the 2 through 4 hitters here with Rendon, Soto, and Matt Adams. Matt Adams in particular graded out really well for me. Soto obviously is the better hitter. But Samardzija this year has been throwing his slider a lot to both sides of the plate. Adams has put up some pretty ridiculous numbers against right-handed sliders over the last few years. So he stood out. Soto, really good, and Rendon is another, I think, underrated but just phenomenal hitter. So those three I like in general, and then obviously it is a high upside stack because we know Samardzija can implode. I just think that the lineup is a bit weaker than normal.
I'm with you. I don't disagree with that at all. Doesn't look great for mini stacks. I don't have an issue at the top,
Yeah.
but full out stacks, it's tough. Like on Yahoo, where you can play, what is it, 6 from the same team. Washington wouldn't be the team that I'm looking to do that with. Put it that way. All right, Adam. Let's move on. There are two teams that, chalky or not, I honestly don't care, that I really like today, and they are the Rangers against Harvey. I mean, I don't care the popularity there. There's no way I can say, oh no, I don't want all of these power lefties against Matt Harvey in Arlington. Like you're not going to convince me that that's a bad idea. And the second one would be Tampa Bay against David Hess. David Hess has shown a little bit of life this year, looked a little bit better, but Austin Meadows has been a stud. You got Tommy Pham. G-Man Choice struggled, but this guy's got a lot of pop with the platoon advantage, and he's shown it. Brandon Lowe, I mean, even Kevin Kiermaier batting 7th. Don't love him, but you have another lefty bat that can make some noise. I just love this Tampa Bay team today, even though it's at the Trop. I think some of them are priced nicely. Others are just in great spots. Some are at bad positions. Just there's a lot you can do with this Rays team. And until David Hess proves that he can have any form of sustained success, I'm going to assume that he's still the guy that gives up a lot of power to left-handed bats and pretty much a lot of base runners to anybody.
Yeah, and a couple of things that stand out. That first start of the season when he was really good against Toronto, his fastball velocity was up like 2 miles an hour from last season. He's now made 4 starts this year, and his average fastball velocity has ticked down in every single start. His slider also has not had the success that it did last year.
What was it at last start?
I don't have it in front of me. I think it was like 92. There it is.
Okay.
90. So it was 94.3 in the first start, 93.9, 93.3, 92.7.
Okay. Gotcha.
And his slider hasn't been as effective this year either. Not getting the swings and misses it did last year. The movement looks a little bit different in terms of vertical and horizontal movement. The expected WOBA against it's been hit pretty well. So I just don't really see anything about him that I like. And Tampa Bay is also interesting because if the hitters that you would think of as like, or two of the hitters you would think of as like being the best, Ji-Man Choi and Brandon Lau are like the only 2 hitters on the team who haven't had success against Hess's pitch types in the past. Like everyone else has. So you have 2 really good hitters, or 2 above average hitters in Lau and Choi, and then you have Meadows, Pham, Diaz, Garcia, Kiermaier, Zunino, who have all just hit sliders and changeups for power, depending on what side of the plate we're talking about. So it's just a lineup that really 1 through 8 grades out really, really well.
I'm with you. It's just so hard to get away from it. And Meadows has been spectacular. Really like this guy. And Choi, batting 3rd. Look at the price you're getting on Choi as well, right? I mean, I think, what is he, 2,700 on FanDuel? Pretty much everywhere. 15 on Yahoo's fine, but on FanDuel, 2,700, and then 37 on DraftKings. Some of these guys are just priced really nicely. Brandon Lowe, you're going to have to pay for him. I get that, but what do you like him here? Say you're not stacking. Is this somebody that you would look to even at this price point? I think I would, just because batting 5th against Hess. He is pricey though.
Yeah, I would. I mean, I don't love the second base position either. So, you looking at other second base options, like you have Danny Santana in Texas in a good spot against Harvey, but you're talking about a $400 difference for Danny Santana compared to Brandon Lau. I would take Lau there. It's just not a really good position. So yeah, I like him regardless of the stack. And one other thing I wanted to point out, just from a pricing standpoint, or people, trying to hand build a lineup or 2. So like we talk about being contrarian within a popular stack, so you don't have to stay in this spot. One thing that like would stand out to me is you can stack Tampa Bay, play like Brandon Belt at the same price point as G-Man Choi, even though I like Choi, but that makes you carrying because Troy's going to be so popular in Tampa stacks. Now you have a Tampa stack where if Belt beats Troy, you just have a leg up on everyone.
All right. I'm with you. Outside of the hitters here, you have Stanek leading off this one as your opener, and then Yanni Chirinos looks like he'll be the long reliever here. Chirinos is a good pitcher. It's just you're not going to really get him at a considerable discount. If he was 6,500 on DraftKings, I'd be all over it. But 8K is a bit much. 36 on Yahoo also seems a bit rich. And then on FanDuel, he's also, I think he's like 7,300, but you don't really need to go there. So how do you view this pitching matchup and Baltimore's hitters?
I have no interest in Baltimore hitters. Ryan Stanek obviously lights out to open the game, and then Chirinos I think is good. I'm almost tempted to go to Chirinos anyway. Like the price tag sucks, but so does pitching on the slate. He not probably, but has a very good chance of picking up the win, which helps a little bit. Basically adds an inning and a half to what he's going to throw. So I don't hate the idea of going there just because FP2 is really, really rough. No interest on FanDuel just because he can't get a quality start if he doesn't start.
Yeah, I mean, look, it is. I actually had his name in the deep dive the night before. I usually do like an outline of the players I'm going to write up.
Yep.
And then I write it up the next day because researching to find the guys you want to write up takes just as much time as actually writing them up. So it gets me off in a decent start. You're not overwhelmed at the beginning of the day. And Chirinos was one of them. I ended up removing him just because the 8K is a lot. And I don't know if he's going to can I pay 8K for a guy that's going to throw 70 pitches? But you're right. Very good shot at getting the win. And he might throw more than that. It's yet to be seen.
Yeah, I mean, I completely think he's too expensive, but also the way I see it, and especially if we run into weather issues with Odorizzi, if we get 17 points or something from Chirinos, there's a pretty good chance that's one of the better SP2 scores on the slate.
I totally agree. Absolutely. If Chirinos was starting this game, he would be my number one SP2. And it might sound ridiculous, but it's not. And the reason I say it is because he did throw 88 pitches when he started or to begin the season. And I feel like Cash would give him at least a longer leash there. And I'd have a better idea of what I'm going to get out of him. Let's move on though, Adam. The pitcher that will be most popular, and I think rightfully so, Cole Hamels, Sandy Alcantara, this one at Marlins Park between the Cubs and Marlins. The lowest total on the slate is Baltimore, believe it or not, against Stanek and Chirinos. The second lowest is Miami against Cole Hamels at 3.6. Meanwhile, Sandy Alcantara on the bump for Miami, 4.5 implied total for the Cubs. Cole Hamels is going to be popular, no question. Right now on Yahoo, 54% ownership, 51% projected ownership on DraftKings, and on FanDuel, 26% ownership, where you also have Carlos Carrasco. Let's talk about Cole Hamels here. Obviously a popular play against a dreadfully bad Marlins squad.
Yeah, I mean, I can't find a reason not to roster him. If you wanted to get away for ownership reasons, then fine. But it's a good park. It's a just really bad Miami lineup. If you're looking for leverage against him, I would look to Brian Anderson or Jorge Alfaro. Starlin Castro at a weak second base position is fine as well. But it's just I think I can be contrarian in other spots without worrying about giving up Cole Hamels, who still getting swinging strikes. He really returned to form last season after a bad 2017, and there's just not many good options here. So I don't have a reason to get away from Hamels.
All right. I don't think there is one. Even if you wanted to, if you're on DraftKings and you get away from Hamels, what pairing of pitchers are you going to feel even remotely decent about playing two of them?
Right, exactly. And it's not like there's a ton of expensive. It's not like there's a ton of expensive hitters. Like Boston's not on the slate. The Yankees aren't on the slate. There's no Coors game. What's really the upside outside of Hamels can have a bad game and half the field's dead. But outside of that, what upside are you building into your lineup by getting rid of Hamels?
Exactly. All right, Sandy Alcantara. Any thoughts or interest here? His ownership right now. Projected at 22% on DraftKings. That is the fourth highest among all pitchers. The fourth highest among all pitchers. Also coming in around 25% on Yahoo, We saw Alcantara earlier this season with a brilliant start against the Rockies, 8 scoreless with 6 strikeouts. Then he went on to not record one single strikeout against Atlanta across 4 innings, and then strike out 6 against the Phillies, but also got rocked in 5 innings with 6 earned runs, 11 hits. He's yet to allow a home run, though, this season. And my guess is that he will definitely have some ownership based on what we're seeing.
Yeah, I like him. I think the price tag's fair. I think the ballpark's good. And I like his stuff. He's one of these young Miami guys who there's going to be some bumps in the road. He can struggle with his control at times, but I do think he has good stuff. If you go back to, since he came up last season, against lefties, he's held them to a .070 expected ISO, a 298 expected WOBA, 131 expected ISO, and 304 expected WOBA to righties, a 14% swinging strike percentage to righties, just shy of 10% to lefties. And there are more lefties in this lineup. So it's not that it's a great spot for strikeout upside, but there's not really any great spots for strikeout upside amongst SP2s outside of like Matt Harvey, and that comes with its own issues. So I'm fine getting out to Sandy Alcantara here.
Yeah, it would be a whole different story if we had a few more pitchers to talk about, but this may just be a, process of elimination. Alcantara makes sense. And that's about it.
If you're looking for, if you did want a one-off, I actually, obviously, the middle of the Cubs order is where most people would go, but I actually really like Kyle Schwarber.
What are you have any specific reason for that, or just that he's a decent price, middle of the order with the platoon advantage?
Well, I mean, he's sitting 8th, but
Is he batting 8th today? Ugh.
Yeah. So he's going to have no ownership. But if you look at how Alcantara goes after lefties, it's basically hard fastballs, which Schwarber's fine with. But then 22.7% usage on his changeup. Hasn't been hit for power, but does have a 374 expected WOBA. I don't have that StatCast page in front of me anymore, but Schwarber jumped off the page amongst everyone on Chicago in terms of power against right-handed changeups over the last few years.
Fair enough. It is wild. 139 lefties faced, 1 home run allowed for his career. Although he strikes lefties out at only 13%. Righties, he's actually struck out at 27%, Adam. So not a bad K rate at all for Alcantara. And he's facing only 3 righties today. So I'll be honest, that's a little bit concerning to me. I would have liked to have seen more same-handed batters in there, but I guess beggars can't be choosers on this slate.
Yeah, I mean, that's where I'm at too. Like, it's not the ideal lineup. I don't think there's a ton of strikeout upside because the Cubs themselves, most of them don't strike out a lot. And he doesn't have the platoon advantage in most of these matchups, but, make an argument for someone better or that doesn't have issues.
All right, well, let's talk about a guy who definitely has issues, but will definitely have some popularity today. This is someone that you and I have followed so closely over the past couple of years, just, waiting for him to fully turn the page into a guy that we can rely on every 5 days. We talked about Gibson yesterday, who, like clockwork, collapsed in the 6th inning, the 5th inning. Someone tweeted me, and they're right. They're like, yep, they should just pull him after. Was it the 5th?
It was the 6th yesterday. It was the 5th, right. The first couple games of the season.
Right. Once he gets through 4 innings, it always seems that the collapse is coming for Kyle Gibson. 4 2/3 innings, 4 2/3 innings, 5 1/3 innings for Gibson in all 3 starts this year. But that's neither here nor there. I was referring to Kevin Gausman, who, like I said, has some pretty solid stuff. You're going to get some really solid games if you had the balls to play him earlier this season, which should have been no concern at all, going up against the Miami Marlins, I believe. You got great results. It just isn't guaranteed with a guy like this. Now, I will say one thing, Adam. When you look at the pitch selection for Gausman, he's throwing the splitter more this season. And he only made 2 starts, I think? 2 starts? Yeah. In 2 starts, he's throwing the splitter 42% of the time. So he has been almost exclusively, I'm serious, almost exclusively 4-seam splitter, 53% fastball, 4-seam fastball, 42% splitter. That's making up more than 95% of his pitch usage through 2 starts.
Yeah, so I really like to see that. That's really how he should be. He's always been good about throwing the splitter to lefties, which makes sense because that's the pitch. It's a change-up splitter, like whatever you want to call it. It's a pitch that most people throw to the opposite-handed hitters, but he's always been like hesitant to throw it to righties, and instead he throws this just trash slider that gets blasted, or he throws his fastball and it gets hit. So it's been good to see him throwing that splitter more to both sides of the plate. Wasn't as good, obviously, against the Mets as he was against Miami, but he did still have a chase percentage on pitches out of the zone up over 40%. He had a double-digit swinging strike percentage again, so that was good to see. It's, him, but I do really like him. My biggest concern with him tonight, actually, is that Brian McCann is catching, and
Yep.
I don't like. I'd rather Tyler Flowers be catching. Flowers is one of the big reasons that I was really excited about Gossman when last year. Flowers just really ahead of the curve as far as analytics go and just game planning. So in the first 2 starts this season, it was Flowers behind the plate. This will be Gossman's first start with McCann. We know from his time in Baltimore that unless he's changed, he is going to pretty much throw what the catcher tells him to throw. So I'm a little concerned about his pitch usage there. But again, there's only so many options. If you look at swinging strike percentages for the Arizona hitters against right-handed splitters, changeup, combinations, they're through the roof. Like most of these guys are up, 18 to 20%. So that bodes well for Gossman. I do really like him. He's my second favorite pitcher, right up there with Cole Hamels. I just think that McCann catching is one reason to be a bit concerned.
All right. Gossman last year, we saw how dramatic the impact was when you have someone like Caleb Joseph or Wellington Castillo behind the plate. In the year before that as well, it's significant. And what I found interesting is, remember, if you were to look at the whole pitching staff, Wade Miley at the time, Ubaldo Jimenez, like all of these guys were a lot worse with Castillo behind the plate. Kevin Gossman is just more extreme than anybody, it seems. And like you said, it appears that he just throws what he's asked to throw. You never see him go shake off a pitch. Never. I guess we'll see, but I like to see that he's relying heavily on his best pitch, and hopefully that makes a difference. Right now, you have a game where the Arizona Diamondbacks have an implied run total that is one of the lowest on the slate at 4 even. But on the other side of this one, you've got a pretty high total for the Atlanta Braves. Where are they here? Last I looked, they were up there. Do you have it?
5.1 last I saw.
5.1 against Zach Godley. So what do you think of that?
Kind of torn. I don't usually like taking guys against Godley because I think his stuff's pretty good. He hasn't really been that sharp to open this season. I do like Atlanta, and I hate taking pitchers against them, so I'm not planning on loading up on Godley. Freddie Freeman really stood out to me in his matchup here. I think that Atlanta's a perfectly fine stack. They are kind of expensive, though. Like if you're stacking the guys that you really want, you get 5,200 for Acuna, you have 48 for Freeman. Albies from the wrong side of the plate is 4,300. It's kind of tough on this slate since I really don't want to be punting pitcher too much.
Yeah, me too. SunTrust is good for lefties, no question, but not a spot that I'm in love with either. I will say on the other side, it's not going to be popular. And I do like Kevin Gossman, but it doesn't mean that he's not prone to getting hit sometimes. I'm not just assuming that he's going to go out and have a great start. Plus, like you said, McCann being behind the mound or the plate doesn't help. There are certain positions that aren't that great. And I think if you look at shortstop, Eduardo Escobar stands out as a decent one here. Batting second, hits from both sides of the plate. Again, SunTrust is solid for lefties, and he's got the platoon advantage against Gossman. I really don't hate it. And quite frankly, given Gossman's propensity to sometimes just implode, I don't think the Arizona Diamondbacks are the craziest team to target if you're looking to get get a little bit different with a stack, just because there are some guys in this lineup that do have some power, although some of them are pretty expensive as well. Any thoughts on Arizona bats before we move on?
I think that it's appealing also in that these guys aren't bad. David Peralta is good. Escobar is not bad. And this is a slate where, like, we talk about leverage a lot, where stacking against a popular pitcher gives you a leg up if it breaks your way in tournaments because you're passing a large percentage of the field. On slates like this, where I like Gossman, but his ownership is going to be inflated because of the lack of other options. Same goes for Cole Hamels. But if you're stacking, Miami and thinking they're going to be the highest scoring team on the slate, good luck. A little bit more likely with Arizona here. Like, it is a favorable hitter's park. They do have some power in their lineup. Gossman is capable of having bad starts. So I am more interested in Arizona just from a game theory standpoint, and stacking against one of the highest owned pitchers on the slate, because I think that, like, let's say he's 30% owned, he on most slates would not be that highly owned. It's just more a function of every other pitcher on the slate being worse than normal.
That's right. I'm with you. Okay, 3 more to go here. Let's talk about Minnesota and Toronto. I mentioned it earlier. Jake Odorizzi, massive projected ownership here, pretty much across, on Yahoo and on DraftKings, 50+% projected ownership at the moment. We don't have our latest update on projections, but when we do, I'll let you know if we're still on, or they'll let you know on the Live Before Lock show that takes you up till 7:05. By the way, Deeper Dive is the promo code to get a half off, 50% off your first month of premium subscription at awesemo.com. Deeper Dive, all one word. When you click sign up on the homepage, make sure to put that in when you select your plan. You get the ownership projections, player projections for all of our sports, all of our articles that we spend a ton of time on. Alex Baker, Awesemo himself, of course, all of his rankings, his content, projections. What more? Oh, Fantasy Cruncher add-on, the lineup builder. There's a lot here and much that I haven't been able to get to. And also our premium Slack chat. I got it right. That hopefully you come and say what's up when you join. Use the promo code Deeper Dive. You'll get half off, 50% off your first month at awesemo.com. All right, Adam, you had mentioned that we have some weather concerns here. Odorizzi, Trent Thornton, who was impressive in his first start, perfectly fine in his second start, actually pretty good, and then got blown up pretty good in his third start against Tampa Bay. Let's talk pitching here.
So this game looks, as of right now, like it will probably start in a delay and then be good to go. So feeling a little bit better now about going to this game in general. Odorizzi obviously will be one of the most popular pitchers on the slate. I think that's perfectly fine. Toronto's been really bad this year. Odorizzi, through his first couple starts, the strikeout stuff's looked pretty good. Had that one start where he got hit hard early and left the game early, I think, against Philadelphia. But other than that, he's been fine. So far this season against lefties, actually a 20% swinging strike percentage. Not sure exactly why that's happening, and I don't think it continues, but he's always been, pretty decent as a pitcher, and the price tag's not bad on a slate with no pitching. So Odorizzi's fine. If you wanted to go against him, I would look at guys like Randall Grichuk or Justin Smoke in the middle of this order. Really, like 3 through 6 would be the spots for Toronto that I'm looking to take hitters from if I wanted to get guys against Odorizzi. And then on the other side, I don't like the matchup for Thornton. It is a Minnesota team that scares me because there's not a ton of strikeouts at the top, with Kepler, Polanco, and Rosario all being reasonably difficult to strike out. There is power here, but on the other hand, I like taking talent, especially on slates where pitching just really isn't that good. And I do think Thornton's got pretty good stuff. So not a top pitching play for me, but I do think that there's an argument to getting to him here.
All right. I don't disagree. I knowing that you have strikeout stuff is really all that matters on a slate like this. With Odorizzi, how much do you have right now?
Let me see. I had crunched earlier and then my internet cut out, so I'm not sure if I still have it.
All right. Do you have an idea of what you were at?
I think I was around like 40.
Okay. So you're probably going to be with the field on that. That's where I'm assuming.
Yeah, that would be my assumption.
What's that?
I said, yeah, that's my assumption.
Yeah. What about hitters here from either side?
So I mean, for leverage, 3 through 6 for Toronto, I think is fine. I like the lefties from Minnesota, Kepler, Polanco, Rosario. Through his first few starts, Thornton's gotten hit pretty hard by lefties with a 438 expected WOBA, 362 expected ISO. Still misses some bats. His curveball in particular has an 18% swinging strike rate to lefties. But these are all guys that'll put the ball in play. And then you have, a right-handed power bat right in the middle of them with Nelson Cruz. So like 1 through 4 from Minnesota, but especially prioritizing the lefties.
All right. We got 2 to go here. This one is a good one. Angels and Texas at Globe Life Park. right now you have implied totals of a slate high total 5.6 for the Rangers and 5 even for the Angels. I'll tell you what, earlier today, I was hoping that we might have seen a heavier righty lineup for the Angels. I would have legitimately considered Lance Lynn.
I
Uh,
still am.
yeah, well, we'll get to that in a second. Look, I talked about him in the deep dive today. When you're looking at all of these chalky pitchers that, like Odorizzi, going to be around like that high owned, whether you're playing him or not. Lance Lynn is a guy who, for his career, holds lefties to a 279 WOBA, a 108 ISO, and a 27% K rate. He has a 307 xFIP for his career, and a 6% walk rate. He's very good against righties and always has been. So, yes, Trout is very good. I mean, going up against Trout is never fun. But Andrelton Simmons, Lucroy, Cozart, Fletcher, I mean, those are bats that he should have an easy time navigating around. The truth with me, though, is while I have interest in Lynn, I would have liked him a little bit more if we had 6 righties. And I also have interest in Bohr and Calhoun and Goodwin. This is a spot where I'm very willing to go to both sides of it here.
Yeah, the thing with Lynn, and I kind of had it surprised me when I saw it this morning. So we know that he's better against righties. He strikes righties out, at a high clip, but he really hasn't been giving up power to lefties either. Since the start of the 2017 season, an expected ISO of 167 to lefties. Since the start of last year, 123.
He's
Not a lot of swinging strikes,
fun.
but yeah, doing a good job of not giving up a lot of power either. And there's not a lot of strikeouts in the Angels lineup, but there's also not a lot of power. Guys like Goodwin, Lucroy, Listella, Cozart, Fletcher, none of those Simmons, none of those guys scare you. So it's really the top 3 that scare me. And again, when we talk about these SP2s, there's some issue for all of them. If you're talking about Harvey, it's that he's not very good. If you're talking about Lynn, it's that there's no strikeouts in this lineup. If you're talking about Miley or Montas, it's that there's no strikeouts for them. So there's problems with every SP2. I think that Lynn is in one of the more favorable spots, especially when you consider that the Angels probably will have pretty high ownership because of their prices and because of the ballpark. I think that Lynn actually works out pretty decently as an SP2 in tournaments.
Yeah, I would expect Lynn's ownership to be very low and expect these Angels to be pretty popular. Maybe I'm wrong, but I don't think I will be. I mean, even Andrelton Simmons is projected to have massive ownership, or at least in relatively speaking, compared to the rest of his position. I think you could do a lot worse than Lynn. I mean, this is not a great Angels team whatsoever, and 2 of their best hitters are still hurt. So there you have it. I'm surprised. I thought I'd be on an island on that one for sure. I was pretty confident about that. Rangers, I love the Rays, but the Rangers are my favorite offense today, Adam, and I have no reservations about that. I don't care if Danny Santana isn't very good because Harvey's worse. I mean, Chu, Santana, Mazzara, Gallo. I like Andrews too because the shortstop position is weak. And how about Asdrubal Cabrera? He has taken no time acclimating to Globe Life. He's been a monster there this season. And you may need to test this guy. His power's off the charts to start the season. I love the 1 through 6, and I'll even do you one better. Isaiah Kiner-Falefa, I don't hate him either because I think batting 8th, he's going to see plenty of opportunities to drive batters in. Terrible catcher position, and whether it's a righty-righty matchup, whether he has power or not, he's still in a lineup that I expect to do really well towards the top, which should trickle down at least to more opportunities for him. All right, I'm out of breath. Go ahead.
All right, so I'm with you. I love Texas. That I think is obvious. Like Matt Harvey, since even once he turned things around, and I use that kind of loosely, he still struggles with lefties. So far this year, that's been the case also. A 512 expected WOBA, 363 expected ISO. Since the start of last year, a 232 expected ISO to lefties. And there's a ton of power here in the Texas lineup. So I love Texas. I will be playing some of the other side, though, and the only reason is this is, I think, the best strikeout upside spot for any of the cheap SP2s. Harvey has actually been getting swings and misses against lefties this year. He's faced a lefty heavy Texas lineup or lefty heavy Milwaukee lineup. Got absolutely lit up both times. So I'm not saying it's like a safe player. It's going to work that often, but he's coming off a game with a 16% swinging strike rate against Milwaukee. Was that like 14% against Texas? For the season, he has a 16% swinging strike rate against lefties, 27% swinging strike rate on his changeup so far. the swing, and Texas does have strikeouts in their lineup. So I just think on a slate with ugly pitching, the fact that you can leverage Harvey against the most popular stack on the slate and get more strikeout upside than you get from some other guys makes it an appealing play. Like, not that I'm jamming him into all my lineups or anything, but I just think it's worth mentioning that there's a path to him actually having a big game here.
All right. Wow. That one caught me by surprise. I will say
What's
this.
our projected ownership? What's our projected ownership on Harvey?
It's got to be non-existent. It is.
Yeah, I mean, that's, I assume.
20%.
Yeah, right.
No, I'm kidding. 0.7.
Yeah. Okay,
Very,
right.
very,
So, I mean,
very low.
yeah, I'm not talking about needing to get Harvey in like 30, 40% of your lineups.
Right.
It's just that in your lineups where you don't have Texas, having Harvey does give you upside. It's not like you're talking about a pitcher that if he has success, it's probably because he got 12 lineouts.
Gotcha. This will be the first start he makes that wasn't at Angel Stadium or O.co. So let's hope that. I mean, I'm very, very high on the Rangers today,
Yep.
and I know you are too. I'm not saying you aren't, but talking from a leverage standpoint, huge park downgrade for Harvey. I don't even need to go into all the Rangers. They are all good. I mean, honestly, if you asked me about them, other than maybe the Shields, I wouldn't have, or Forsythe, I wouldn't have a good argument against any of them. Adam, let's close it out here. Oakland and Houston. You have Frankie Montas and Wade Miley. The floor is yours.
I'm just staying off the reservation on my pitchers here. Wade Miley and Montas, neither one I assume will have much ownership, and I don't mind the spot for either one. I don't think there's a ton of strikeout upside, but you're talking about ownership being concentrated on this slate to a bunch of guys in kind of marginal spots or that are marginal pitchers, and you have a favorable pitcher spark here. You have Frankie Montas going for Oakland against a predominantly right-handed lineup for Houston. He doesn't get a lot of strikeouts, but he does have good stuff. He's got a good fastball, has a good slider. Since last season, a 117 or 125 expected ISO to righties with a 12% swinging strike rate. And then on the other side, you have Wade Miley facing a bunch of righties, but he's really improved. He throws his cutter over 50% of the time to righties now. That's a pitch that since last season has an expected ISO below 100. Doesn't get a lot of swings and misses. Not a lot of strikeout upside for him here. More of, you're hoping you get like 6 innings, strikeouts or something along those lines. But, again, there's question marks about all these SP2s. I don't mind taking, cheap ones like Montas and Miley, who I don't expect to get blown up, and just, hoping that I'm on the right side of variance on a low on play.
I mean, 16 from your SP2 might be good tonight.
Right, exactly.
And if they get the win, yeah. Let me just say, though, that, while we're talking about this game, Alex Bregman on DraftKings is what, like 4,100 or something?
Yeah.
I don't care who you're facing. That's just too cheap for Bregman.
Yeah. Best slider hitter on the team too, which is good against Montas.
Yep, for sure. And Montas does not miss a lot of bats. So,
right.
Any thoughts before we head out on hitters here, other than Bregman?
I mean, I agree. Yeah, I agree on Bregman. Springer's too cheap, also a little bit more expensive than Bregman.
Semien should lead off. So
Chris Davis is on another planet right now. Piscotty's cheap, but I'm just siding with the pitching and hoping that nothing gets blown up here. I think it's also worth mentioning that these totals, if I remember correctly, have both dropped pretty heavily since this morning.
Yeah, 4.2 for Houston, 4.4 for Oakland.
I think we were at like 4.6 and 4.5 when Josh and I did the show this morning.
And now it's right in the middle of the pack. We'll head out. Before we head out, if you appreciate the show and you like what we're doing here, hit us with a thumbs up, like the video, because it helps us greatly, and we really do appreciate it. Also, subscribe and hit that notification bell so you always know when new content is going to drop. We appreciate you guys for tuning in each and every day, and we will leave you with this, our top stacks for tonight. I'll go first here, get it out of the way, Adam. My top stacks, 2 of them far and away more than the others. Texas and Tampa are my 2 favorites. I don't dislike Boston on FanDuel. And then Toronto simply because of the Odorizzi chalk. And then I think also the Angels lefties, but I just hate stacking this team. So that would be tough. But if I were to do it, it'd be Calhoun, Trout, Bohr, and Goodwin, the 1, 2, 3, and 5. All right, go ahead.
Texas, Tampa Bay, I'm there with you. I agree with. I like the Toronto call from a leverage standpoint. but I'll go with San Francisco as my kind of just off the wall thing, and then Washington and Minnesota.
All right, well, that'll do it for us. Coming up next is Live Before Lock, and they're going to take you guys up until lock. And remember, early lock on FanDuel, 6:35 Eastern time. Good luck tonight, Adam, and I'll see you back here tomorrow on the Deeper Dive presented by Yahoo.com.